Hello, my name is Abraham Klein, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about the past couple of weeks. At the time of this recording, I should say, the time of this recording is somewhere around September, September of 2018, and I recently was in the hospital. And fortunately, it was not because I got pneumonia, although I did get pneumonia while I was in the hospital, but that's a side story. I actually went into the hospital recently because I was scheduled for surgery. I was scheduled to get surgery because I have been having trouble with my left arm, my full arm, mostly in my hand, and so there was a cyst on my spine, up toward my neck, that had grown inside of my spine, and so the neurosurgeon had to go in and had to remove it. And this is actually something that had happened a few years ago prior, and that was a little bit more scary a situation. I had been dealing with several other sicknesses at the time, and I ended up going into a coma and was ended up going on to dialysis and went through respiratory failure and had all sorts of problems. I was in the hospital 1 week shy of 6 months, and by the grace of God, this one wasn't quite as much of an event. But I went in on August 21st. And they did the surgery. They went from T1 to T4. I'm not sure if that's something that you folks can understand. I don't really understand it myself. But it's they went down from T1 to T4 on my spine, a space about that big. And they took the pieces of my spinal cord out, and they went in and they took the cyst out, and now we're just waiting to do therapy on my arm and hope for my spine to get better. For the most part, the incision is healed for the most part. But yeah, I was in the hospital for 15 days, which is much better than 6 months. But I was expected to be out in 3 days, but I ended up getting pneumonia, had a couple setbacks, and ended up having to go 5 days without eating, and it was a pretty messy situation, but people were praying, and I got better, and we've been home now almost about a week now. About a week now, yeah. Actually, today is 1 week since since we've been home, as of this recording, and it's been a blessing. But for anybody who may have never been in a situation in which you've been in the hospital for a lengthy period of time, I'm making this video to sort of, I don't know if you'd call it a warning or if you'd call it just a sort of a heads up, if you will. And maybe it'll affect you differently. I don't know. But when I've been in the hospital for any length of time, there is, and I'm not talking 1 or 2 days, I'm talking at least 2 weeks, and when you come home and you actually have, which you're actually weaker than you are when you went in. And that is, sometimes you experience a bit of, I don't want to say depression, but a sort of helplessness. Like, especially back in 2014 when I came home. and I came home and everything seemed different. I'd been in the hospital for almost 6 months. And now I'm coming home. I've gone through all this rehab. I've had to learn how to walk again. I've had to learn how to swallow again. And my life for the past 6 months has been nothing but the hospital. And now I'm being thrust back into normal life. And I remember anticipation. There's an anticipation that comes with coming home. and that's great, because you want so bad to get out of the hospital, and there's almost this feeling as though you fear that at any moment as you're on your way out that they're going to pull you back in. But I remember I came out of the hospital. We rode home, and Pastor even had me preach that night, which was pretty exciting. But then, and that would have been on a Wednesday, and then Saturday, we went to we had a whole bunch of stuff we did. We went to some friends' house. We went to a thing called March Madness out in Latrobe, and by the end of that day, I was so emotionally spent that I literally broke down and cried in my room because it was too much at one time. And I remember just feeling this. I don't know. It was I maybe it was a depression. I don't know, but it was just a weird, helpless feeling, as though like I was in this situation that I could not control. And of course, I just spent the past 6 months in that, and in which I couldn't control my life, because for a while, I couldn't move, I couldn't walk, I couldn't feed myself, I couldn't even eat for a while, I couldn't breathe on my own, and now I'm finally home, and life is drastically different. And that was back in 2014. Then came the second time that this happened in 2017. I went into the hospital, and this sort of came on suddenly. Like, I went into the hospital because I was having some respiratory issues. Turned out to be really bad case of pneumonia. They ended up putting a trach in. I ended up going to a coma, and I ended up being just shy of 3 months in the hospital. And it was shorter time, but it was a lot. I mean, it was probably the worst pain I think I've ever experienced in my life. Just constantly in pain, constantly just I was a little bit more prepared for it this time. But this time I even went into cardiac arrest. That's how bad this one got, and I ended up with scars on my face and in my head. It was a very bad situation. And I remember when I got out of the hospital this time, I remember my mom came into the church. We went to church that night, and my mom came in. I remember I hugged her, and I just started to cry because, I don't know, it was one of those moments where I felt like I needed my mommy. Because it was just so hard to deal with. Again, I guess it was just a situation where I felt like I had lost my ability to be who I was, because I wasn't who I was prior. I wasn't able. I was dependent on oxygen. I had a trach. I couldn't walk like I wanted to, and I couldn't. I definitely couldn't run. It was very disheartening and very depressing in many ways. And so that was then. And so then this next time I went in for this surgery, I get out of the hospital, and I'm in all this pain. And I'm still in pain as I'm recording this video. And I get home, and then there's this immediate feeling of like you don't have control of the situation. Maybe things aren't where they were when you left home, and so now you don't know where it's at, and you want to try to clean something up, but you don't have the strength to do it, and it can be a bit overwhelming. Maybe that's the best word, is that coming home after a lengthy stay, and you're not fully recovered. Probably the best word to describe coming home is overwhelming. And I would encourage you, just keep an attitude of prayer, and keep your mind focused on the fact that this is going to take time. This situation that you're in, this time of being weak, this time of being dependent on others, it's going to take time. And sometimes there are some things that might end up being permanent. And I hate to think of that. I hate to think of the fact that maybe you end up with some problem that ends up debilitating you for the rest of your life. But um, time is the key. You have to realize that healing, energy, all of these things take time, and you're just going to have to be patient and trust the Lord and trust those around you. And I don't know, maybe I feel like I've babbled on for a while, but I hope this has been an encouragement. And I hope that if you ever find yourself in that situation, which I hope you never do, but if you ever do find yourself in a situation in which you've spent a long time in the hospital or in a medical facility, and you come home and things look different or seem different, and you're in that hopeless state and you might feel overwhelmed, just stay focused. Keep a mind of prayer. Trust God, trust those around you, and I would say you'll be able to get through it. All right? Thank you for watching.